So today let's talk about color and the type of the different color systems you have to choose from starts at the time that you create the document. You'll notice when we create a new document, either from a print document or a web document, at that point in time determines, you can always change it later, but it determines what kind of color mode you're going to work in. If we select a brand new print document and we look at advanced down here, you'll notice that the color mode is CMYK. And I've talked about that before when we did the scanning, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Okay. If I select a new web document and I look down, notice an RGB. Red, green, blue are the primary colors that are used when you work with light, and that's what the primary colors are with your monitor. Okay, very different color systems. So I'm going to switch to a print document for right now, just a default piece. And then we'll start over here. I'm going to look at the book a little bit to make sure everybody understands where and how to control color in here. So if I at any time want to change from CMYK back to RGB or back and forth, to do that you can go to File and we can go to Document Color Mode and we can change it from here. So CMYK or RGB. You can't have both, you can only have one or the other. So if you're going to if whatever you're doing is eventually going to go into print, it needs to be CMYK. And what I mean by print, not the inkjet printer that we have, it would be offset lithography. That's where it's really critical. If you're going to design for the web, you may design it in CMYK, but when you save the document for the web in the proper file format, it's going to be converted to RGB anyway. So it's best, if color is an important issue for you, make sure that colors are accurate, to go ahead and make sure that you're using the right color system ahead of time. But it can be changed at any time. When we look at our menu down at the bottom here, everybody should know by now that we have the fill color and the stroke color. And whichever one you click and it comes to the front is the color that will be affected. The little widget right here, this little button just above the left of it, gives you the default foreground or the default fill and stroke colors. Default fill color is white, the default stroke color is black. If you wish to invert them, the little widget to the right of that is this one, and notice how you can toggle back and forth between fill and stroke. You also have these little colors down here. We can put color, we can add a gradient, or we can also select, because remember you can determine if you don't want to fill or you don't want to stroke, you want nothing in that particular shape or path, you can select this little none button right here. Now in conjunction with that, we also have up at the top the same thing for fill and stroke, and we can determine the color from here, and it brings up the default color palette. Similarly, with the stroke, we have a default color palette. So there's probably 4 or 5 different places that we can go to control color in here. The next place, let me go ahead and close some of these, is over here in our color palette. I'm going to pull that one off, and I'm also going to pull off the color guide. So now we have more places. Not only do we have a slider, color sliders that we can use, and since we're working in CMYK, we have CMYK sliders that we can use. Down below, we have a little spectrum palette that we can pick colors from here. And when you click and drag along here, notice that the sliders move and change to fit whatever color is being selected. So if I move over here and I want a nice deep blue for my fill color, notice it already tells me it's 88% cyan, it's 75% magenta, there's no yellow and no black. Now why would you want to know the percentages? Because if you wish to recreate this color later on, and especially when you're communicating with printers, then you can have those color callouts available, and they can recreate those colors by dialing those percentages in. We used to have some books here, and I don't know if we have them anymore, that are produced that have these little color swatches in them, where you can see exactly each percentage of color, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, or if there is no percentage of those colors, what the color is going to look like, and you can preview them ahead of time. It's sort of a thing of the past now because you can preview these so readily from here. Just as we can change the color mode from up there in our color sliders, we can change it from here. We can switch to grayscale. I can go back to RGB. We also have a color system called hue, saturation, and brightness. And when you're designing for the web and we're in RGB, I can look at only web-safe colors. In a nutshell, what web-safe colors are is, depending on what platform, well, there are colors that are the same on both the Mac and the PC. Now, why there's a difference, I don't know. I only know that there are a total of only 216 colors that are common to both the PC and the Mac. So when you're designing, as you guys are doing in here in Illustrator, and you're using a lot of flat, two-dimensional shapes, and you want them to look the same on both the Mac and the PC, you might want to restrict yourself to web-safe colors. Otherwise, as you may or may not have noticed in switching and looking at web pages from one platform to another, you will, from time to time, see some pretty significant color shifts. But if you want consistency, you want to make sure that it's seeing the same on both, then you would have to stick to the web-safe colors. Okay? So we can change that from here too. Now, if I switch, if I go to an RGB, and I go to color mode, RGB, notice it's still showing CMYK, and that doesn't make any sense. If you're working RGB, why do you want a CMYK sliders? So I would have to switch from here to RGB. And now you just have red, green, blue, and it shows you that same color that I had, that blue. It's 56% or 56 red, 84 green, and 164 blue. And you'll notice that there are a total of 255 possibilities for each of these. Now notice that when I drive up an RGB, the red, green, and blue, basically 100% of each, or 255, 255, 255, it turns to white. With color, when you're painting with light, the absence of color, when you turn down and you go to 0, we have black. When you have 100% or 255 of each of those, you have white. So I'm going to go back to CMYK, and I'm going to go back to File, and I'm going to go back to Color Mode and switch back to CMYK here. So we have our CMYK possibilities here. Let's pick a color in here. Then we also have our swatches, and there are lots of different swatches to choose from. And ever since, I think it was, maybe it was CS3, CS2, CS3, when Adobe acquired Macromedia, major changes in the color. Major changes that are just really cool. Because what they have available now, I mean, these are the default swatches. So I can go ahead and I can select here. I can create a new swatch. I can create a new swatch color group if I wish. We can also open a Swatch Library, and you'll notice under Swatch Library over here from the flyout window, lots of different swatch combinations from art history. I have ancient to Baroque to Russian poster art. We have celebration colors, color books. This is where there are even more color possibilities, because I haven't talked about Pantone colors yet, which are called spot colors, that are used in printing as well. And they're also used oftentimes for when you're doing silk screening. We have color properties, so bright, cool colors, desaturated colors, saturated, warm, soft colors. You know, we have neutral colors, nature colors, we have metal, kids colors, you name it. A whole bunch of possibilities in here that are a whole bunch of different palettes to choose from. That if I select from here, let's go to foods, I'm going to select fruit. And you'll notice that when I open that up, I have all of these different color combinations of different kinds of fruit. And when I roll over each of these, you'll see that these are the colors of red apples. These are the colors that are commonly seen in bananas, in blueberries, in citrus fruits, in citrus 2, in durian. Anybody know what durian is as a fruit? I don't. I thought I was pretty familiar with different kinds of fruits. Whatever, figs, you name it. And these are the colors. So if you're not that familiar with color and you want a range of colors that you can use, for example, if I want to come back in here and I'm going to go ahead and click some bananas, I can take that folder of colors and drag it in here into my palette. And now I have those colors that have been added to that folder of colors I've added to my swatch palette now that I can use. I can create my own custom colors as well, that we'll do in a minute too. So I'm going to go ahead and close those out. And I'll leave that up because we have all these Pantone colors that we can use too. So I'm going to hide that for a minute. And we'll also talk about the color guide in a minute too, which is pretty cool. Okay, so we have that series of our swatches. We can create, down at the bottom here, we have Swatch Libraries menu. This is where I got those. You can also get them from up here in the flyout menu. Open Swatch Library. So it's either in that flyout menu or from down here. The button next to that says Show Swatch Kinds menu. If I click here, we want to see all swatches, only color swatch, only gradient swatches, pattern swatches, or color groups. So if I only want to see the gradient swatches, I select that, and these are the only default gradients that are available to me at the moment. I can create many more. There are also some gradient libraries that I can pull up that are available to me, but if I want to limit the palette, that allows me to do that. I'm just going to say show all swatches for right now. This one is not, the swatch options is deselected at the moment, but that gives me additional flexibility. I can create new color groups from here, just like we have this banana color group, we have the grayscale color group, and we have the print color group here. We can create our own custom color groups. We can also create our own custom swatches here, which is pretty simple and pretty easy. Notice that whatever color is in the foreground here, or in the fill, whatever is selected, if it's not in my color palette here, even if it is, if I click here where it says New Swatch, as soon as I click that, it selects that color that I have generated from the color spectrum, and it tells me the color callouts, that it's 56% cyan, 0% magenta, 51% yellow, and 0% black. I can also specify, and right now I want to keep this a process color. The swatch name, I can give it a custom name, or I can leave it, and it's really pretty nice so that you have access to those color callouts in the future. It will give it the color, that name of the color callout. So you can go back at any time and you can dial in those specific colors. Now, what is also important is that if I choose to keep it a unique color, or do I want it to be a global color? Global colors can be very effective if you plan on making revisions to color later on. So this would be a good time, since I'm creating a new color, to select global at the moment. And watch when it creates a new little swatch here, what it does. Notice that there's a little tick mark on the lower right-hand corner that shows that that indicates that this is in fact is a global color. So now if I go ahead and I use the color box here, and let's pick a different shape here. Let's go ahead and pick a star, and I use that. So I'm creating an illustration that has hundreds and hundreds of shapes, and all of those shapes, or many of those shapes, utilize this color. And later on, the client tells me, you know what, that's a nice green, but we've changed our mind. We wanted a green, but we want it slightly different. So what's an easy way to change in your illustration all of those colors, or that wherever that color has been used? We can come back and we can double click. Wait a minute. There we go. Click on the color itself, and because it is a global color, watch what happens. Let's decide that they want to make it a little bit more on the bluish side. So as soon as I click this, notice that even though these shapes are not selected, because this is a global color, it changed wherever that color has been used. Now that can be a nasty thing too. It can stomp on all the colors that you did if that's not the desired result. But if it is something that you want, it can be a very effective tool. Okay, so we have those tools as well, and then we'll get to gradients and transparency. The other thing that's important too, and is extremely important in the newest version, CS4, is your appearance palette, because whatever you have selected, it tells you the fill color and it tells you the stroke color in here. And later on in more advanced exercises, we will cover how you can have multiple strokes, how you can have multiple fills for an object, and they can overlap and interact with one another, and you can create some really complex things in here. So this is another place where you can control the color. Now, in addition to that, we have something called a color guide that is relatively new to Illustrator. And these features are really pretty cool. They really work especially well when you start to edit colors and you want to create an illustration that uses different color schemes and go through different permutations of those color schemes. Maybe you want one to be warm, cool, you want another one to be complementary colors. Maybe you just want to test and see, what is my illustration going to look like if it has a variety of different colors available to me. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything that I have here, and I'm going to import a picture, and I'm going to show you a pretty nifty way of working with color guides and working with some of these new colors. Let me go ahead and import or place an image. And this is something I think is pretty cool that the book sort of talks about and touches on, but I would hope that you guys would make use of this a lot more later on. Let's say, for example, let me find a nice photograph here. I have one here. No, I don't want that one. I don't want just the JPEG. Okay, I'm going to go to a different place here. Let me go on the hard drive. I'll go into Photoshop for a minute. And let's look in samples and Photoshop. And we have the flower, we have the fish. The fish would be a good one because there's lots of colors. The lake one would be a good one too. Let's do the lake one. Let's do the lake. So I'm going to go ahead and place the lake picture in here. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate. I'm kind of crazy about this. I want to go ahead and rotate the canvas so that it matches. So if I go under Document Setup, I switch to horizontal so that it matches. Okay. Now, let's say I choose to base an illustration on this photograph, and I'm going to first start by using Live Trace to do that. What I can do is I can click here, and using Live Trace, I'm going to use 16 colors. So it's going to reduce all of the colors in there to just 16 colors. But it'll look somewhat posterized when it does that. But that's okay, because maybe I'm going to do a silkscreen print. Maybe I'm going to put this on a t-shirt. I'm going to do something with it, and I can't have millions and millions of colors. Okay. Now it's reduced all of those colors to just 16, and now what I can do is I can expand. So I have my photograph that's been turned into vector graphic now, from bitmap to vector. And now I've decided, you know what, I like these colors, but I want to bring them in here. I want to know what all of those 16 colors are. So what I can do is if I select all, I can come over here, and where it says new color group, I can click here, and it says, it gives me some options. I can just use selected swatches to create a new color group, or it says selected artwork. And I wanted to take those 16 colors that it generated in that artwork and create a new color group. Now, do I want convert process to global colors? I can do that. I'm just going to include swatches for tints, and that's all. And let's name it lake, lake colors. You'll notice, here we go. Here are all those colors in here that it generated from here. Then in addition to that, you'll notice in the color guide, we have some options here. I can, if I want to select, and we have from here, we can select complementary colors within that group, complementary to, which is a little bit wider spectrum, split complements, monochromatic color schemes, shades, tints, triads. We can select a whole bunch of different color ranges in here. That's one thing that we can do within this. So I can select any number of colors in here. And I have, it's like having it you know how in the traditional artists, they have their little palette and they're mixing colors on there? How all of these swatches are pre-mixed based on these existing colors that I have. Now, what I can do in addition to this, which is especially cool, this is what blew me away when I saw this. Okay? Now, watch what happens when I select. I'm going to go ahead and select everything in here. And I'm going to click on this little button right here. It says Edit or Apply Colors. So now I've decided I have one color scheme in my illustration. I want to explore some other color schemes to see what work. If I click on this little button right here, it says Edit or Apply Colors. It brings up something called Live Color. I can use these existing colors, or I can swap out. If I only wanted to use banana colors, I could select those in place of it. I can come in here. Let's cancel this group, because what I want to do is I want to, I don't want us to do that. I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to create another group in here. I want to go ahead and show, let's bring an art history palette in here. So if I Swatch Libraries menu, let's go to art history, and let's try ancient. So we have that. We have a bunch of different ancient colors. Let's drag this one in here as well. Okay, so I have that. And I'm going to, with all of them selected again, I'm going to go ahead and click here so that I have edit colors, and it should bring it back up. Come on. Come on. Why aren't you working? Let's close this. Select all these colors again. Okay, let's click from here. There we go. So now I want to select Etruscan colors. Notice how it's changed and modified all of those colors. I can go back to my light colors. It goes back to the original colors. Now watch what else I can do on here. See all of the 16 colors that are available here. If I select any one, if I select, for example, the red, and I want to shift that color and make it different, or I want but when I make it different, I want all of the other colors relative to it to be different. I can click on this, and as I drag it around, notice how all the other colors change as well. That when you select one, all the rest spin around in the color wheel and change accordingly relative to that color that I selected. What I can also do is notice how I can make that more intense, or I can make that lighter. I can also disconnect it. There's a variety of things that we can do in here. I can unlink it. I can take this one and I can move it wherever I want and make whatever color I want from this. And I can't see which color I have selected here. I don't know which one I've selected. I'll just leave that one. I'll go ahead and reconnect it and click OK. Save Swatches. Yes. So we save that. And now I've come up with an entirely different color scheme for my lake scene. Now there's more things that we can do in here. That when we go back in here, not only can we reassign colors, but we can change from over here. If I go back to, let's select again. Let me undo a couple of times. Take back. So we're back to here again, selecting all of these. Selecting down here again. And let's go ahead and let's reassign some colors. So for right now, the red was assigned to this purple. If I can come back in here. Here's the new color. I can come back, and if I decide that I want this green to be assigned to the purple, it should take all of those and change it. Likewise, I can come down here, and let's pick some of these. I should probably use fewer colors in order to see this change. Let's change this one and assign this into here. There we go. Notice how I'm reassigning colors in here? Taking one and assigning them to another color, and they're changing as I do this. And again, I can also go back and I can change the different color palettes. Maybe I want all the colors to be related to this banana color. Then I can go back to the edit colors, and I can deselect these, and I can decide, you know what, maybe the green that I have selected this isn't working. Notice how that's changing. I can go ahead and change that. See how it's reassigning all the colors? This is just the coolest thing. In a very short amount of time, you can come up with tens, hundreds of different color schemes for a project with very little effort. It's actually gives you too much freedom in many respects. There's also something else that we can do in here too. It's under the cooler. So if I go to, let's see where they have it now. Oh, that's right. It's built into, oh shoot. It's built into CS4. Cooler, if we go to, let me go ahead here. View. Trying to remember where it is in CS3. What I can do is I need to go to it's with Adobe, and why isn't it under here, under one of these? Filter, select, type. It's called Cooler, K-U-L-E-R. And it's now built into CS4. Before, though, we had, it's something that's done live. It's live color systems that you have access to on Adobe's website. Let me just go to that and see if we can't find it real quick. Let me go to Help. And I'm going to type in Cooler, K-U-L-E-R. Adobe Labs is what I want. There we go. And that's where it's located, or was in CS3. So I'm going to go to Cooler. Accept. Okay. So these are live colors that are actually on the Adobe website. And we can go in here and you can type in keywords to find out, like Frito. You know, I want to know a Frito combination, color combination, see if something comes up. There we go. Flying Fritos, Nona Christie, Frito Bandito colors. I want the Frito Bandito colors. So if I click here, it will actually take me to the Cooler website. that again is organized by Adobe. And this is still, to a large extent, in the experimental stages, but some pretty cool stuff. And it requires Flash, as you can see, in order to play this thing. I thought we had the latest Flash in here. Okay, I'm going to waste too much time if I do that. So let me go back here. Let's bring this up. So if I select these colors, oh, come on. Why won't you let me select you? Select a feed, because I could go ahead. No, I've got all that I want here. I'm going to add it to my color palette just by clicking here. You see how it added them? So now I have, you know, if you've ever looked at the packaging of Fritos, these are the color combinations that are used. So I have access to all of these colors. If you go onto the Adobe Cooler website, you can also create your own color schemes and add them. You can look at popular color schemes that are used. You can use innovative color schemes, you know, a whole variety of things that you have accessible to you, which are really, really pretty nice. And as I said, with CS4, they've made this, integrated this more into Illustrator. So color becomes a very important thing. Now because I'm trained years ago as an illustrator, I like working with images like this and trying different color schemes and seeing what works. For those of you who are interested in becoming graphic designers, this would be particularly important and helpful. And one of the exercises that they have in here is the Aquo. And that's what you're going to do, is it's a label for, you know, it could be water, it could be, you know, a soft drink, something like that. But as you may have noticed, when you look at packaging, it could be for gum, it could be for soft drinks. When they have a variety of flavors available to you, that the overall packaging design is uniform. It looks the same. But the only thing that changes are the color systems, right? Depending on what flavor it is. Lime obviously will be shifted more towards the greens, and orange more towards the oranges, and cherry towards the reds, and that sort of thing. But so think of what you can do with this. You set up an initial color scheme for one of them, and then you go in and you can use either some existing palettes that you can create that are created for you, or that you can create yourself, or you can go back in, as I did here, and edit the colors. And while all of those colors are selected, go back in and just rotate it around the color wheel until you get a different feel that fits for that particular flavor. And within a very short amount of time, you've created all the different variations that you may want, or more than what you really need for the flavors of the drinks that you're designing. And they all look uniform to one another. You know, they look relatively, not, you know, they look different, but they look like they're the same. They're part of the same family of colors, even though they're different. Very, very powerful tools. Very nice. What else here? Working with a color guide. We did that. I showed you about working there. Editing colors. I showed you what happens now. If I select a color in here, this one I made a global color. But if I choose any of the other colors in here, if I select this one and I double click on it, if it is not a global color and I change it and I click OK, unless that color is selected in here, it will not change. Okay, so it's only global colors that change automatically that way. The other kind of colors that you should be aware of when you're designing for print are Pantone colors, which are also called spot colors. And those you saw, I guess I put them away. I wish I hadn't. Let me go ahead here and let's try to bring them up. Let's open Swatch Library, and we want color books. And let's pick up here. We have Pantone process coated papers or colors. And when that comes up in a second here, there we go. These are all the spot colors that are available just for a particular paper type. That if this is an uncoated or a coated paper, these are all the colors that are available that are solid colors. They may have a CMYK equivalent, but when they're applied at the printers, they are applied as a solid color, not a juxtaposition of dots. Does that make sense? That's what a spot color is. So, for example, when they printed the cover of this book, when you look at the cover under a loop, you don't see individual little dots. It's just one big swath of color. The only way they could have done that was to use a spot color, a Pantone color, that would be used in addition to the CMYK. And that obviously costs more, but you will get, when you're working in printing, it will give you better results. So, and you can't use too many of them, you have to be careful about it. But oftentimes, higher end jobs will use one or two spot colors. Anywhere there's large swaths of color, especially when there isn't a process color available, or even if there is, process colors by themselves don't look that good. To get this particular red, just to say, well, you have CMYK, just use magenta. Magenta doesn't look like this. It would be a combination of probably yellow and magenta in order to get this red. So they would have to juxtapose red dots against yellow dots. And you would actually see on this big area of color, you would probably see those little dots, and it wouldn't look as nice. So in place of that, they will, you know, in these old, at least in the old days with the big Heidelberg presses, where they can run 6 colors at a time, it would be one of the additional last 2 colors that they would run as a spot color. And you would pick from one of these Pantone colors, and you can do a color call out. You can say it's color 185C for coated. You know, it depends on the kind of paper that's being printed on. And they can pick from that specific Pantone ink that they will run on the press, and it will just be put in that individual area. Now, when you're working in Illustrator and you use a Pantone color in a given area, you have to be careful. Because especially if it's going to a printer, because that's going to be translated when they do the color separations, it will come out as CMYK, and whatever you use those Pantone colors, that's going to come out as a 5th color. Or if you use an additional one as a 6th color, and so on. That can add a huge amount of money to your print jobs. You have to be careful. You have to know when and when not to use spot colors. In CS4, they have a very nice feature where you can preview the color separations and to see what it's going to look like. And it will break it down for you. You will see the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black plates. And if you've used Pantone colors anywhere, it will show you where those colors are going to be placed too, those spot colors. Now, when you do t-shirts or any kind of silk screening, all of those colors are generally separate colors. They would be equivalent to Pantone colors. You don't mix them together, you know, in dot patterns and halftones as you do in print. You have simple, flat, two-dimensional colors that are placed next to one another. And in that case, you would probably use Pantone colors or individual colors for all of those plates. And when you do the separations, I mean, if it was a really elaborate silk screen on a t-shirt, you could have as many 6 spot colors. There would be no process colors, just spot colors that would be used, that would be separated, that would comprise that illustration. So that's what all of these are. And as you can tell, when I pull this up here, when I looked at either from over here or up here, when I open the Swatch Library and I go to, oh shoot, which one is it? Color books, you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of these. Now there's also, Toyo colors, I believe, or colors, depending, they're similar to spot colors, but if you're printing in Japan, color systems that you may have to use. These are all of the different Pantone colors that are available to you. And again, it depends on what you're using. There could be solid coated, solid matte, and what these refer to, coated versus uncoated versus matte, has to do with the paper types that it's being printed on and how the ink will look on those particular kinds of paper. Coated papers generally are heavier, they're calendared, they're really white. They're the kinds of papers that we use when we print here. They hold ink really well. Uncoated papers are generally the kinds of papers that are matte papers. Not all of them, but they are matte. They're very porous. They soak up ink like crazy. So for it to hold a bright color, it will have to be a different kind of color. You will use then an uncoated pastel or an uncoated process color in order for the inks to look properly on that type of surface. I encourage you to look at some of these different color schemes that are available to you. Again, especially if you're not that familiar with color, to get an idea of some of the, the palettes that are available to you, to get you started. And it really, I think, would behoove you to work within a limited color scheme that you see here, with no more than 5-6 colors, and limit yourself to that. And then if you want, you can expand using the color guide, because the color guide will enable you to pick colors that are related to these, but expand in a wider range than those colors, but they're still related and in the same family of colors. So there you have it. I think I have covered everything that I want to today about color. And you can either do the exercise in CS3 or the Aqua one that they have given you in, oh, there is one more thing that I need to do. I need to talk about gradients. I haven't talked about gradients yet, and I haven't talked about live color. Let me talk about gradients and live color. So I'm going to select everything here, and I'm going to delete. And I'm going to create a simple circle. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to apply a gradient. And if you recall, if I select from here, let's look, and we're just going to look at our gradient swatches. And there's just a handful of them here. So if I pull off my gradient panel here, and I go to expand to show options, it's not a bad idea. There are two different kinds of gradients that you can have. You can have radial gradients, or I can switch this and make it a linear gradient. To control the gradient, if it's linear, I use the gradient tool, which is over here to the left, gradient tool. And if I want to change the direction of the gradient, I click and I drag, and wherever I release the mouse is where the gradient will end, and that little line that appears determines the direction of the gradient. On the other hand, if I switch back to a radial gradient, by default it starts from the center of the object and radiates outward. If I choose to make this look more like a yellow orangish ball, and I want my light source to come from the upper left hand corner, I can click and drag here, and again, wherever I release is where the gradient starts, and wherever I release is where it ends. So this starts to look more three-dimensional. What if I want this to have a core in here, meaning a part of the sphere that really doesn't get a whole lot of light? Well, we can edit our gradients in here. Notice that it starts with a yellow at one end and an orange at the other. Wherever you click down here, it will automatically add a tab for color, and I can slide it back and forth, and that will determine where that additional color is placed. And what it does is it just adds a color in between these. It kind of calibrates whatever color should be in between there. But I can come up here and I can select whatever color I like. I can go ahead and I can select, for example, a red one here. Now notice that I can go ahead and I can shift the placement of this. I can move this way down like so. Move this up. See how I'm adding color to that? And as you move these around, it changes how much of the color you see. If I want to add another color down here, I click, and I can make that a deep red too. Change it to a linear gradient, and you can see you have kind of a wide range of things. If you don't like all the colors that are in here, pull off the tabs, click and drag, and just pull them off, and we're back to where we started. That's how that works. The top little diamond determines where the distribution of those colors. That by default it's in the center, so you have 50% yellow, 50% orange, but I can shift this so it's predominantly yellow and just a little bit of orange. And the same with every color that you add in between. We can determine in here how you want the colors distributed, whether you want them evenly distributed or you want it dominant in one color and just a little bit of the other. And again, if I choose to add this gradient to my palette, I can do so. Wherever you have it here, wherever you have it in your fill, all you have to do with the palette here is click this little plus tab. This is a new swatch, and it says new gradient swatch, and boom, it's added to your palette. And you can create as many of these as you like. Something that I haven't done yet that was done with the skier is that we did something called live color. And you can turn basic shapes into live color. Sometimes it's beneficial, sometimes it's not. One of the things that they have done that I find sort of interesting here is that, let me go back and with this shape, and let's just have it a basic orange fill here. Oh, come on. Let's select all of these again. I want to make sure that I have all of them. I show all swatches. Okay. Let's turn that to a nice red one. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this and overlap it and make it yellow. Okay. Now, with both of these selected, watch what happens. I can now hold down the Shift key and select both. And now we're going to use live color down here, which is available. This is the live paint bucket right down here in the lower left-hand corner here. I'm going to, with both objects selected, I'm going to select live paint and select make. It turns these into live paint. And watch what happens when I select the live paint bucket. When I roll over each of these segments, I can specify a particular color. Now what I want to do is I'm going to switch and I'm going to make an orange here. And where they overlap, because the combination of red and yellow would be orange, correct? Probably should be a little bit lighter, so I'll pick this one instead. So it looks like they're transparent, doesn't it? And then later on in your illustration, you decide, you know what, I didn't want the placement of those. This is like the MasterCard, you know, Visa thing. Watch what happens when I select one of these. I'm going to go ahead and select Group Selection, and I'm going to move this over. Notice that because this is live paint, it's able to determine that overlapping shape, and it knows that it needs to be changed too. So depending on the kind of illustration that you're doing, this can be very effective because then you're not restricted. Had I not done this, I would have had to go back in and edit my shapes and edit the colors, but it's doing it, it's updating it live for me. Does that make sense? Because if I had done that otherwise, if I had, here, let's just select these and move this here, and let me do that again without using live paint. I'm going to go ahead and select this one, and let's make that one red again, different red. Make it this red. There we go. I'll make a copy of it, and I'll overlap it, and we'll make this one yellow. Now, the only way I could determine an overlapping shape would be to use the Pathfinder tool. Okay? So what I can do is, with both of these selected, I would have to make a choice. I could go, because I can't, these are solid shapes, I can only fill one or the other. I can't fill that in-between shape unless I use live paint. If I go ahead now and I go to Window and I select Pathfinder, this would be an alternative for me. I would have to decide, do I want to just use break apart or divide? And that's not a bad option. And now I can select the middle shape by selecting the Group Selection tool, and I can select that orange that I want here. So they look very similar to one another, but watch what happens when I select this shape and I move it. It's an independent shape, and it didn't move the other. So depending on what you're working on, this live option could be really advantageous. See, when I pull it apart, no, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. As long as they're overlapped, they're fine. So there's lots and lots you can do with color now. Just tons. I've just sort of scratched the surface. What I would like to do next Tuesday is there are some good lynda.com videos on this and give you a pretty good updated version for CS4 and the use of Cooler, which is what we started to use here. And again, these are Frito colors. What if you were, I mean, they have so many color possibilities. What if you wanted, you're designing the logo for a football team or a baseball team, or you wanted to know what baseball colors are. We can type in here, let's do baseball colors. There you go. So now here's the New York Mets colors, Chicago Cubs, generic baseball, 2004 baseball tour, baseball and Yankees, Cardinals, LA Dodgers, whole bunch of them. I'm sure if we put in a specific team, we could find that. Name a team that isn't there. Detroit Tigers. Let's try it. Nope, they don't have anything. How about Tigers? Be a Tiger. Tiger Dance. Tiger. Tigrees. I don't think they have the Detroit Tigers, but Seattle Mariners. Want to try that one? Okay, let's try it. Nope. How about just Mariners? We'll try that. That'll probably come up with a bunch of C stuff. Mariners is generic enough. Western Mariners, is that the colors that they use? No? No? Okay. How about here? Closer? You know, maybe somebody's generated them, maybe not. But if you sign up for the Cooler, have your own Cooler account, you can start to build your own portfolio of colors, color libraries. You have access to all of theirs, as well as generating your own that you can store there, which are pretty cool. They can be, as you can see, very, very helpful. Very helpful. Just lots and lots you can do with color now. Just so much. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today with regard to color. Lots that you can do. And I hope, and especially when we work on the final assignment, which is an experimental piece, one of the things that I'll probably have you do on that assignment, something to think about, is it'll have you do one version in one color scheme, and then I'll say, okay, now use the tools that are available for you in Illustrator. Same illustration, just as I did with that boat on a lake, and now create some other, half a dozen other color versions of that. And it won't take you that long, but you can come up with some pretty interesting solutions, maybe not really good ones, but some interesting ones in a very short amount of time. Okay? Okie doke.